Stop searching for the truth. I found it, and I wish to God I'd stayed a clueless moron. There's something living inside my head. It's been pulling the strings on every word I've said, every move I've made my whole damn life, and I was naive enough to think it was me. They called it the Parasite, and genuinely believed they'd kicked it to the curb. But all they did was fatten it up, letting it grow into something monstrous. I've seen its true face, and now I know what's waiting for every single one of us after we die. And trust me, it ain't oblivion. It's a feast. You know that feeling? When you're in an empty room, but you just know you're not alone. Our subscribers know that's not your imagination. And for anyone new here, welcome to the reality where the darkness really does stare back. This is Eyes of Darkness. If you're ready to see what's hidden in plain sight, hit that subscribe button now so you don't get left behind. Make sure you click the notification bell. That's how you'll know when it's time for the next lesson in fear. Ready? Good. Lock your doors. It's starting. Cults are a weird thing. Everyone's scared of them. The internet is flooded with thousands of stories about the horrors that go on inside these organizations. But the most interesting part is when you fall into their grip without even realizing it at first. It's one thing to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses or something similar, the classic, worn-out stuff. A totalitarian village where the labor of the deceived is exploited by a prophet passing himself off as another son of God, openly fleecing everyone, even using your wife under some highly spiritual pretexts. You'd really have to be completely out of your mind not to understand, to believe all that nonsense. It's a whole different story when you land in a group of charismatic people who express ideas close to your own spirit. When the process of joining the cult is slow, gradual, with such a transformation of your personality that if you hear a question from your relatives, like, "Did you join a cult or something?" the only answer is laughter. What kind of cult is this? We don't worship anyone. It's just a very unusual philosophy, albeit with a huge admixture of metaphysics. When, using only logical operations, we peek around such corners of existence, invisible to the eye, that we are delighted by the truths showering down on us. It's more like a philosophy club. What kind of cult is this? Much more dangerous than a classic totalitarian one. I understood this too late, when there was simply no way back. I got into it when I was in college. Or rather, I hadn't gotten into it yet, but that's when the process of gradual immersion began. I was in a terrible depression and just saw no meaning in life. What meaning could there be? Study, then slave away at a job, have a bunch of kids, get old, and die? I didn't believe in God, being a staunch atheist. I had read too many books in my life to believe in such nonsense. Who would have thought that I would fall into a cult? In a boring lecture hall, I sat in the very back row and started to read. Half an hour after it started, a late, red-haired student burst into the room. She sat down next to me, all energetic, as if on cocaine, and asked if I minded. "Go ahead," I grumbled and immersed myself in my reading again. But the girl clearly wanted to chat. "Every time I see you, you're reading something," she smiled. "What are you reading?" Hermann Hesse, Steppenwolf. "Wow, how do you like it?" "It's not bad. You could say it's about me."
And so it began. It turned out the girl had read it too. The book is about the existential struggles of an intellectual snob who is so withdrawn into himself that he has forgotten how to enjoy life. When I told her, "You could say it's about me," a switch obviously flipped in her head like, since this gloomy guy is having an internal crisis, we can pull him over to our side. Let's call her Anya to keep names out of it. She didn't start, of course, with a direct statement like, "Join our cult." She started by discussing the book, drawing thoughts out of me, and gradually presenting her own ideas. These ideas seemed very curious and intricate to me, as if you were to look at a cylinder from above and see a circle, whereas your whole life you had only looked at it from the side and seen a square. I liked Anya a lot, but I felt no anxiety talking to her. The conversation flowed so easily and interestingly. Not every guy is capable of such reasoning, and here was a girl. We sat next to each other for the rest of the day and talked about the meaning of life and why there is so much suffering everywhere. Her way of thinking seemed to instill a light in me. For the whole week we walked together. She was brainwashing me, but this brainwashing, to be honest, was even useful, and it was far from religious, so it was impossible to suspect a trick. She taught me some psychotechniques, after which I would hardly ever be the same again. My view of the thoughts in my own head changed dramatically. Now I looked at them not as myself, but as some kind of noise, like the rustling of leaves. It was just there, appearing on its own. Thoughts are not me. I fully realized this when she told me to listen for a long time, for several hours, to what was happening in my head. It turned out that the thoughts didn't fully belong to me. They just convince us that they are us. This is why we all suffer, because it's impossible to be happy if you are controlled by something infinitely deceitful, which feeds on your negativity. She called this entity the parasite, and believed that this entity blocks the perception of the true nature of reality. It very selectively feeds us information about the world around us, deceives us, and leads us by the nose, always showing a mirage of reality. But why does it need to do that? I asked, of course, being skeptical of her story. And why do you need to have breakfast and dinner? Although I didn't start considering my own brain a parasite that had taken over my entire reality, the realization that thought is not me made me feel light and amused. And yet, people seriously get carried away by every thought, as soon as it emerges from the depths of consciousness. By the end of the week, I had already met Anya's friends, positive and energetic, not like everyone else. After talking with them, I wanted to become like them. We would gather for walks, go on hikes in the woods outside of our sleepy Oregon town. No alcohol, only contemplation of life as it is, and strange songs by the campfire in an unknown dialect. There was something in the unfamiliar words, something purifying, majestic. After these songs, walks in the woods turned into a mystical fairy tale. The first time, I was confused by the unfamiliar sensations. The Douglas firs became alive. The boundary between me and the rustling of the birch crowns blurred. A state where thoughts disappeared, and only the world remained. And since there were no thoughts, there was nothing that could be called a personality. Nothing prevented the realization of unity with life. This could be called my first religious experience. Although now, I suspect they were slipping me something. We all drank tea from a common thermos. They recommended special books to me. I read voraciously, feeling the world around me change. The world was changing, yet without changing. And when I became proficient in mystical, philosophical literature and finally integrated into the group, They invited me to go for a weekend to a certain town. By then, I already understood that I had encountered a whole organization of a mystical nature. They were inviting me for an initiation, a special rite that would reveal the true nature of reality.
My old friends, when I told them about this new crowd, unanimously said it was a cult. But when I tried to explain the benefits I had received, like getting rid of depression and some phobias, when I tried to explain the ideas, I hit a wall of impenetrable misunderstanding. It was clear that people were not open to these ideas. They seemed to be asleep and unwilling to wake up. That was the first time I set myself apart from the gray crowd of perpetually downtrodden commoners, scared of their own minds. I felt like I was head and shoulders above them. There was no turning back. I agreed to go to the town for the initiation rite. Curiously, they didn't take any money from me. When I asked about the cost of the trip, they just laughed at me. We've already seen that you are worthy. That is the only payment. No one told me what kind of rite it was, so I was quite nervous. To go to some remote place with people I barely knew, even if they inspired trust. The town was a neat village set amidst picturesque mountains and mighty larch forests. The air here was crystal clear and seemed alive, instilling peace and tranquility. The residents of the town followed this mind-bending philosophy, and they had moved to this remote place, far from civilization, to cleanse their minds of mental garbage, social conventions, and labels. As they explained, this was the only way to find freedom. The village was closed, and strangers were not allowed. If anyone wandered in, by accident or out of curiosity, they were first politely asked to leave. And if that didn't work, they would supposedly, accidentally, set the dogs on them. The dogs didn't maul them, but the uninvited guests would immediately lose all interest and leave. I didn't meet a single, what you would call, redneck there. Everyone was intelligent looking, neat, in simple, probably homemade clothes. Men with beards and bright eyes, women cheerful with long hair. They reasoned soberly and wisely, and bore the hardships of manual peasant labor with joy. They ate only what the fertile land gave them. Many of them had left businesses and good jobs in the big world. Nevertheless, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a catch somewhere. After all, this was indeed a sect, a commune, a closed society that you couldn't just get into. As it turned out later, the community had a leader, a long-haired man of about 50, although it was rumored he was well over 100. His name was Constantine. Just by his first name, without any ranks like Son of God or Prophet, he was the first to find and discover a certain book, something like the sacred scripture of this sect, where eternal wisdom was concentrated. This is where I began to have serious doubts. As soon as we arrived in the town, I was bombarded with esotericism from all sides, and I had never been able to stand it. They said that here I would get rid of the parasite. Constantine led me to a tall central building made of stone, with intricate architecture. On the way, we met a stocky man. "Off to the initiation, are you?" he asked. "Yes," Constantine replied. "Good luck, kid." The man's face even brightened. "The most important thing is to open yourself to the book, and it will open itself to you." I entered the building alone. Constantine locked the door from the outside, explaining that it would be safer for me that way. I tensed up, but it was too late to turn back. On a carved table in the middle of the single room lay a book. This must be it, I thought, sat down in the chair and opened the first page.
It displayed strange symbols that didn't belong to any alphabet I knew, and intricate patterns that stretched down through the symbols. I turned the page to see how this curious pattern continued, how it intersected with the symbols, then again and again. Page after page, I turned them, faster and faster. The pattern was pulling me somewhere, and after the 20th page, it suddenly acquired a stunning depth, as if it had fallen away behind the book. I found this very curious, but after another 5 pages, I began to feel uneasy. Something was clearly happening, something very strange and indescribable. The pattern was no longer a pattern at all. It was now the entire space around me. And I walked further and further, unable to tear myself away, because wherever I turned my head, I found this pattern. And then I forgot that I was turning the pages. Most likely, I continued to flip through, but I was completely unaware of it, didn't remember it, because all my attention had gone into the book, into a deep fear of the nightmare of the true nature of reality. The combinations of symbols definitely touched something inside my consciousness, and I really didn't like it. Something unimaginably horrible was approaching. Anxiety made me jump out of my chair, but I no longer saw the room, only endless, fractal-like spaces, resembling sometimes the frescoes in Muslim temples, sometimes a bloody meat grinder full of unearthly horror. What the hell is happening? I asked myself, but I couldn't do anything. It became clear this wasn't just a book. It felt like I had sold my soul to the devil. And now, you will die. A voice came from somewhere in the depths of the multidimensional spaces. And I felt that I was really dying, although how would I know what death was like? This feeling was familiar. It is familiar to everyone. You can't mistake it for anything else. But no one living remembers what it looks like. But I didn't want to die. The book didn't care. To it, I was just a bug that could be easily crushed. I tried to run, but there was no entrance or exit. They had long been lost in the broken space. And the faster I ran, the stronger and more unbearable the pressure of death became. It had to claim its own. I belonged to it. It's impossible to escape death. But the thirst for life pushed me to save myself, to fight. No, I don't want to die, no matter how meaningless I thought life was. And when the feeling of fear filled the entire universe, I went insane and got lost. I suddenly understood what infinity was, because the concept of time had been destroyed. Infinity is a complete fucking nightmare, and it would be better if it ended. But it's infinity for a reason. It has no end. And there was nothing more terrifying than infinity. Death, it seems, took me, because after my will was broken and I surrendered, I felt a delightful state of rebirth. I don't remember what I meant by that anymore. It cannot be described in words, because they are not infinite. And then time turned back. Here I am, talking to Constantine. Here Anya and I are returning from an evening walk. Here I am, starting college, finishing high school, preparing for exams. My first fight, my first time going to the grocery store. I relived my life over and over, hundreds, thousands of times, realizing it at certain moments, understanding that this was not the first time I had seen this. The feeling of déjà vu haunted me in every such rebirth, ending with another wave of death. Everything looped back to that hut in the book, but I remembered everything too late and couldn't change anything. Horror seized me, for I was trapped for millions of years in my own life, like in an endlessly repeating film reel. And gradually, I began to change my actions. I tried to cause deviations, but I didn't have time to do it. The action would end halfway, without having a significant impact on the future that had not yet arrived. Reality was reinforced concrete, and all actions in it were dictated by something unshakable, something that had seized power over the body. The parasite. It was not I who gave the command to act. It had controlled my thoughts my whole life. It was the one that prevented me from acting as I wanted. The brain and the established system of attitudes that automatically predetermined the further actions of who I thought I was. And as soon as I understood this, a terrible pain shot through my head. My thoughts stopped, and I became just a silent observer, which, in fact, I had always been. Only then did I realize that I had only blinked for a moment, and realities were switching from one level to another. Atoms were crumbling into quarks, and those into even smaller particles. I was carried through boundless, multi-dimensional spaces, representing worlds, but with their own laws, completely different. I had already forgotten that there was once a me who had read the book. It was completely unimportant. I still tried to return to an unknown place for an unknown reason, and it was not certain that it was to the same world to which I belonged. Something, who I felt myself to be then, was giving birth to new worlds, new lives. And in these lives, I tried to find myself, to piece myself together. These worlds were lives that were, are, and can be. I could see simultaneously and the distant cold edge of the universe, full of dying stars, and August wheat fields with golden ears swaying in the wind like an ocean. And everywhere, I needed to do something very important. Somewhere I was Constantine, and somewhere else, the professor giving the lecture where Anya and I met. But nowhere could I do that important thing. Everywhere, I was limited by the same thing. The parasite. It knew who we all really are. But it wouldn't let anyone wake up and finish what was started. It held us on a chain and closed everyone off from infinity. It was the one that made infinity frightening, which is why everyone returned, recreating the familiar, non-infinite reality anew. Everyone fell into the sleep of life and illusion. No one could bear the true nature of reality because no one was strong enough to destroy the parasite. It fed on all of us. Without us, it could not survive. And I was enveloped in a great terror of inevitability. Now I knew the truth and could never forget it. But how could I live with it now? I would have gladly returned to the mirage and fallen asleep, but I couldn't. The book gave an indelible knowledge, and that was the difference between death through the book and ordinary death. For eternity, you became a will-less slave of the parasite. And when I finished the book, it all ended. I returned to the stone room. It was already night. One day had passed, but for me, an eternity had passed, after which it would be impossible to ever be the same. I left the community with a broken mind. They tried to keep me. They couldn't understand why I came out of the building broken and destroyed. To this day, I feel the unreality of the world. I am haunted by panic attacks because I can't find myself. Everything has changed, and I can't forget the true nature of reality. To forget, you have to lie. Only through lies and oblivion can one break free from there, recreating this reality from scratch. We have come a long way, Constantine tried to convince me. We have all gotten rid of the parasite, and now we are free. The book liberates. What you saw is only a part of the truth. But the worst part was that they were lying without knowing it. They hadn't gotten rid of the parasite. It had just taken on a more perverse form, creeping into the farthest corners of their consciousness, substituting a new reality for them, creating another mirage. The mirage of enlightenment. They didn't have the will to go all the way to the end, where I managed to glimpse. I saw it. The parasite is invincible. We are doomed to endless captivity, and after death, an infinite hell awaits everyone, repeating over and over again. Over and over. A hell made of an ocean of emotions on which our eternal, hungry executioner feeds.